Hello and welcome back. So in a previous lecture, you learned how to create a 3D image, which is a panorama image, and also create the sky. This time round, we're going to learn how to load and also display 3D models into our scene. Now to begin, you have over here, this is the A-frame documentation section, where we have objects and also models as the heading or components that as a heading that we want to incorporate in our work. Now the the OBJ model components loads a 3D model and material using the WAV format, and most of the time the file format that we have is the OBJ and also .mtl. Now these are the basic file format that we normally load whenever we start thinking about loading 3D objects into our scene. Objects and all probably 3D models into our scene. Now, how do we do this? This is a typical example of how to load 3D models into our scene. There are so many models. You can have a model of a car, import it into your scene, wrap around some materials or texture around it to make it look more beautiful and all of that. You can get some of these models online. You can download them and use it for your project. Now, we can load the OBJ model by pointing to assets that specify the path to the OBJ and also the MTL. Most of the time, the OBJ file and also these two files probably comes in the form of a zip file, where you will unzip and also you reference them. You will have the pictures that make up the model also included possibly in a texture folder, which you can which you don't reference, but the moment you reference these ones, automatically it also references the textures or the texture folder that contains the pictures to wrap around the model that you create. Now, this is a typical example of how to introduce this one. We use the A asset item which is more of the entity that we'll be using, the A asset item. And this is an example. Of course, we create an ID where you can put in the objects, and also we create you link the source of the objects, as you can see here. So the ID is just a short way to call that particular object that is linked to the source that you see here. So for the OBJ objects, this is a way to reference it using the A asset item. Now, there are other entities like the A entity in calling those objects, as you can see, which we have created over here. We will go through how to get them ready. So the object, which is the property, and this is the description, to select an A asset pointing to an OBJ file or an inline path to the OBJ file, and also a selector to an A asset item, that is for the MTL, pointing to the MTL file or an inline path to the MTL file. So you can create an A asset with an ID that you just use to reference, or you write a full inline path to the MTL file. So these two files are very important when you import objects into your scene. You import models into your scene. Now there is another way, that's another file format that the A-frame also takes as model, and that format is what we call the GLTF, which is by short referenced as the graphic library transmission format. So that format is also available. There are times if you want to download a 3D object or model online, the format could be in the form of .gltf, which is the graphic library transmission format. So that is also compatible with our 3D, with importing 3D objects into our scene, or loading them into our scene. So without further ado, I'm going to quickly go into how we can incorporate that into our work. So from here, you can see that I already have the initial stuff that we normally do whenever we are creating objects in our scene. And once we have this, let me quickly reduce the volume of my phone so that I don't get distracted. Yeah, so once we are there, excuse me, we create our A scene, and of course we have the A asset asset management system, which we have been using and calling in the image object, the image primitive quite often. That is what we've been dealing with. Now within that, of course, we download and also move your 3D object to the asset folder. So this, we've created an asset item, which is a village, and we've referenced it in the model. So I have a model folder here, and within it I have this particular file, which is the GLTF, which I just talked to you about, the graphic library transmission format. So GLTF. So I've referenced it in here. And of course, I've called this as a village. So this is a model that I want us to incorporate into our work. And we have our image, which is the clear sunny sky, which we used in the previous one. So I created an A sky. As you can see here, I have an A sky in here. And I've referenced the source with the sky using the sky ID. That is how come we have this object showing in here. So now, this scene that you see is what, if you go to Google and you just type Castle Village scene, you'll be directed to this particular page. And in this page, this is how the castle looks like. If you can see how, that is how the castle really looks like. So this is the model that we're going to import into our scene and use it for our work. Of course, when you have it imported, you realize that it looks more like a game environment, so which you can do certain things. So in this case, we will be confined, the user will be confined into just the castle, so he doesn't feel disoriented in any way. All right, so quickly, what I want us to do is now to create, from here we have our sky. Let me go down a little. Sorry. So we have our sky. Yes, so within that, well, first of all, we've already loaded this one, and those of us who would want to know exactly what I meant by the GLTF, this is what it means. So let me clean this. That is a graphic library, graphics library transmission format. Okay, so it contains, usually when you get it downloaded, it's in the form of a zip file, so you unzip it and you reference this particular file, which is the GLTF, and all the source, the linked files will all be referenced. So if I should click here, it will take me to the entrance, and so that is the entrance. If I click on 2, it takes me to the inside of the scene, and within that we can do other things, view certain things within our scene. So let's go back again. We have our A-Sky already loaded. So once we have that, I would want us to quickly have our 3D model created by, so it's a castle which we've imported here. So now let's try and create our castle. So just a way to know exactly what we are doing. So I'll create my castle. Of course, I'm going to import it. So the castle village into the scene. So within that, yes. So now what we can do is to create an A entity, just like what we have been. Let me just use A entity, and I'll use a tab to get it written nicely. Of course, once I have the A entity, I can as well continue by referencing, calling out the GLTF model. So that is the model that we want to load into our scene. And this time around, the model comes with an ID of village, which you see here. So we can reference the village with the hashtag village. Sorry. Once we have it saved, so you can see we have our village in here. So now let's try and refresh the page. All right, so you can see we are within, let me see if I can increase this one a little so you can appreciate it better. forgive me if you're not seeing it so well. All right, so if I should move in, you can see, so this side is more or less like, you can see that is the average height of the camera. So if I keep moving in, that gives me the average height of the camera. Of course, I can move around the castle, and I can also do some few other things, okay, and see what is happening within the castle. Of course, let me refresh the page again this time round. Sorry, let me come out of the scene a little and try and move around, so you can see you can go into other places of the castle. You can go to different places, you can see what is happening at each point and all of that. All right, so this looks more like we are in a game. So now let's try and, now that we are in this particular object, let's try and find a way to get into positioning the camera in a way that will be more convenient and more appropriate for us to see other things. So this is like we've been able to successfully import our model, which is the GLTF file format, into our scene. Of course, you can also have so many models created and also called on in your scene, any project that you come in with. So once I'm in here, so the next thing I want us to create a camera so that we position it maybe at the entrance of our scene. There's the entrance. So for instance, I can move into the entrance. So okay, so this is at the entrance. So now let's find a way to position our camera to the entrance of the scene. So this is our object that we have in here. All right, so we can see it, we can view it from different angles, do other things. All right, so let's position it. So once we have here, I would want us to download or come out with a model and place that particular model, which is the catapult, at the entrance to help protect the castle. So in case of any fight, they can use a catapult, the huge catapult, to throw stones at any adversary or anybody who would want to attack them. All right, so let me quickly go delve into it. So quickly, I'm going to position the camera. I'm creating a camera, so let me quickly do this. Okay, so I'm going to create a camera, and within that camera, I'm going to have a camera. Sorry, camera, and of course, we'll create a camera by using the A entity as you did in the previous one. So I'm going to copy this one, paste it here, and this time around I'll change the content in there. So I'm going to use the A entity and position the camera at an angle which is possibly, let's say camera position. Excuse me. So I'm going to use, maybe is equal to, let me see if I can have maybe in fact, let me just do it this way. So I'll create an A entity, and within it I'm going to have my position, the position of the entity. By default, the position is always 0, so even if I don't bring the position, this is the default position. And within the entity, we created our camera for the previous one, so we can have our A camera also created, and within the A camera, you can see by default, although we didn't really add the camera to it, we already have our object in the same way as we did earlier on. So now how do we, so this is how it was. So by default, primarily the camera is already created, and of course it is also at the origin. The castle is big, so when we have the origin of this is the middle of it. So when we have the camera at the middle and all these objects at the middle, you can see that you'll be able to see some few other points because the castle is a big place. So that's how we're able to see the door. So this is the camera. So now let's try and find a way to position the camera, possibly to about, let's say, 0 and probably let's say -3, maybe 25, or let's say 0 and also 50. Let's see how that is going to display in here. Okay, this is quite okay, but we still want to get to the beginning. So now let's try and increase it a little from maybe 0 to maybe 25 on the y-axis, and let's save and refresh the page. Let's see how it displays. Oh, it's still here. Let's take it to 100. Let's see. I hope it works. Okay, then let me see. I hope it works. So we have a entity 00 camera, the position of the camera. Just a minute, let me check something here. I hope this thing works. Oh, position. I have it post. Oh, sorry. So I have a position in here. Before, this is what we were looking out for. We had the camera with negative, sorry. This is position, sorry. So now this is still not at the entrance, so I advise we take it to probably the 0. You can see on the y-axis. Now let's move a little high, maybe 10. So we want to see the castle from the top. We can still maintain the y at 0. And now let's try and come out. So we are zooming out, which is the z-axis. Let's make it possibly, let's say, 30. Okay, we are still going out. Let's make it 50. Okay, well, I think we are almost entering. Okay, so 100 brings the castle this way, so we can see the castle. Let's refresh the page. All right, so that is the entrance of the castle. Now let's try and go a little up so that we can see the castle, the inside of the castle. Let's say 10. Okay, let's say 25. All right, so at least we can see the entrance of the castle, and we can see some basic places also in the castle. If we make it 50, we can see it's a little higher. Let's maintain it 25. All right, so we've been able to import our DLTF model into our scene, which is the castle. We got it downloaded from over here. You can just download it. Of course, I'm going to load it for you, so you can also use it to create your objects. So in your projects, you can include models from different angles. You can just design something and come display. I've already given an assignment on the on something to do in graphics, so I would want you to check it out. There's a deadline to it, so don't forget about it. Okay, so now that we have this object, we've been able to include this. We can, of course, move into the object. We can go in to the castle, see other places of the castle. We can navigate around the castle, some other places, do certain things within the castle, see around, and all of that. So as I said earlier, there is another model that I would want us to include over in our scene. Now this time round, as I said, from here, from the A-frame, it's able to pick up these objects, the OBJ and MLT. We already have the GLFT, which is a file format that is also supported by iframe. So that is what we've loaded. Now, within the same thing, I would want us to, let me bring this back again here. Okay, so let's try and also incorporate another model. This time the model is not of this format, but a different format. So in the same way as we created this, we are going to create another A asset item. So that is A asset item. And this time around, the item that we have here is, we'll give it an ID of maybe catapult. And of course, we use the O for the object, so we call it catapult, probably -0. And the source, this catapult, we have it in, we have the catapult, you can see we have it in the model folder over here. Don't worry, I'm giving all these will be online so you can download and use them. You can always view it at the A-frame section. You download it and use it. So I'm going to call this object. So first of all, I'll call the model, and within the model I have the catapult. So I'll call the catapult obj, and that is the first one. So now let's try and create another for the A assets. In fact, we need these two files to be able to load the objects. In our scene. So I have this one. I'm going to create an ID for this one, also called catapult. But this time around, I'll represent it by M. And the source, as you can see, is just like the other one. So it's in model, and within the model, I have catapult MTL. So that is, these two files are what I'm going to include. Now that I have my asset management loading up all the information that I'm going to call in here, then I can now create my catapults within my scene. So now let's try and put in this into our scene. So let's see. This time around, I'm going to create a catapult. And in creating that, I'm going to use an A entity, just like how we did that for the camera, A entity. And the catapult also comes with other components. So as you can see here, we have the components. We start with the OBJ model, and we reference these two IDs that we have created in here. So we have the entity. Of course, we call it the OBJ model. And now we have the chance to now include our objects, which is the OBJ. And this time round, so this is the attributes, and the value is going to be, we are calling the catapult, the first one with the catapult A, O. And of course, once we have that one, we can also call the MCL file, which is also another attribute of the OBJ model. So of the OBJ model, which is the component, this is the attribute, this is the property, and this is the value. So we have another property called MTL, and of course the value is also going to be catapult M. In fact, this is not 0, it is O. Let me get it written correctly. So once I have this, of course, you can see if we should go into the scene, if we should just make this one 0, 0, and we go into the scene, we will see the catapult in there. So you can see this is the catapult. This is the catapult. Let me see. You can see this is the catapult. It's quite huge. Let's go around the catapult so you see what I mean. So this is the catapult. There's the catapult. Without having the position, it is within the scene. So by default, it's the catapult that we created is at the position 000, which is at the origin. So we will want to bring the catapult out to the front of the to bring the catapult out to the front of our castle. So now we will change the position. Let me go back again. So now this is the entrance of our. At the entrance, we want the catapult to come over here. We want to put it here to serve more like a guard for us. So we would have to create a position for this particular catapult. So we add a position to it. So position, of course we have the position, we give it let's try and give it maybe this time around we want to bring it forward, so we can have 0 for the x-axis. It's just the z-axis that we want to increase to, and probably 30. Okay, you can see it is trying to come. Let me go back again to 0. So you see at 0 we don't see the catapult, but now when I change it to 30, you can see the catapult is trying to come in here. Let's change it to maybe 40. It is still coming out. Let's change it to 50. All right, so we have the catapult out of the castle and outside. Now let's position it to the left. So if we are taking it to the left, it means by default it is on 0 for the x-axis. So we want to move it to the left of the x-axis. So we will use a negative value. So probably we'll take it up as a -2. -2 is too small. So -4 is still moving. -8. Well, it has moved a little. Let's say -10. And of course, we've been able to position it at this side. So you can see that is the catapult is now at the entrance over here. It's quite big, so now let's try and find a way to reduce the size of the catapult. So by reducing it, we can just scale it down a little. By default, it's in meters, so we can scale the catapult. We'll scale it to possibly maybe 0.5 for all the 0.5. 0.5 again for the y-axis, and also 0.5 for the z-axis. So as you can see, we have the catapult in here going round. It's quite, I think the size is quite okay. Size is quite okay. By this time round, you can see from here that the catapult, if we should even load it and drag it down, it will throw the ball into the castle. So let's find a way to change the position of this. Rotates the position of the catapult so that this side comes out. In fact, let me increase it again so that you see what I mean. So if I change it to 1, 1, 1, you can see that this thing. So this side is supposed to move out and fight the adversary, but unfortunately it is coming in. If you should load the ball in here and drag it, and it will bounce into this. So now let's try and rotate this one so that we can have the object, this whole thing, displaying here and also fighting the adversary from this angle. So I'm going to maintain this one. So I'm going to go back again to 0.05. In fact, the size is okay for us. So I'll change the rotation of our catapult this time round from, of course, the rotation is by 0, 0, 0. So 0, 0, 0. So if I want to change the rotation to have it, in fact, let me maintain this one so we see it after we'll change we'll scale it again. Um, After we will scale it so that you really appreciate. So now let us rotate it. If you want to rotate it, we are rotating it. Um, if you want to rotate it this way, it is going to rotate on the y-axis. So of course I have this object. If I want to rotate it, it goes this way. Now this is how the object is. I want it to go this way, so I'm rotating it on the y-axis. I'm rotating it on the y-axis, as you can see. So in this case, it means I can change this one. Let's change it to probably 45. You can see it's rotating. 45 is not enough. Let's change it to maybe 90 degrees. It's also not enough. Let's change it to possibly 180. Okay, so we have it here, but it is entering this one. Let me change the position of this one to come a little out. We hope that it doesn't fall. Okay, so now before this was 50, let me change it to 60. We'll come back again and change it to 60. So we just want to get it right. Okay, 180 is quite okay. Let's see. Let me refresh the page. Let's see. All right, so if we're fighting, 118 is not so bad, so we can have the catapult here. But this time round, let us try and bring it a little back so that it doesn't fall. So we can bring it back. And if we do, let's first of all scale this one to 0.05 so that we have it quite small. 0.5 and finally 0.5. So now we've been able to tilt it. So this time when we load the ball here and we spring it, it will go this way. So let's take it back. Before this was 50, so we'll take it back to 50. It is positioned correctly. I think now what we have here is quite okay, which we can use. So now we've been able to integrate models into our scene. And as I told you, the models, the OBJ models, this is how to reference them. You can always visit the page to do all of this. So this is our model. We have it here. Of course, let me change the position of the camera a little to come down a little so we can go into the scene again. So let me change it to probably 10. So now if I should try to, I use W to go into it, so I can go into this, into the castle. I can see these are the places I can see within the castle. Of course, I can have a view of the place in the castle. Of course, I downloaded this one from this page. You can also download it, and of course I'm going to load it for you. All right, so now we've gone through how to load the different file formats of models into our scene, and these are supported: the GLTF, which is the graphic library transmission format. We have the OBJ and the MTL, which is accepted or supported by the A-frame.